Welcome to the Sex Talk Cafe, a podcast where you'll get to learn from the experts in the field of sex, love, and relationships. The mission of the Sex Talk Cafe is to normalize the conversation on sexuality while building a bridge between the sexual and spiritual. I'm your host, Susan Morgan Taylor. I'm a holistic sex therapist, intuitive coach, and specialist in women's sexuality and feminine spirituality. I'm the founder and CEO of the Pathway to Pleasure Collective, where I help women and couples around the world restore intimacy, save their relationship, and get back to love without feeling like they have to sacrifice themselves just to keep their partner happy. Thank you so much for joining me. Welcome to the Sex Talk Cafe. As a former stripper turned RN, then Tantra Teacher to holistic sex coach, known for a pill-free approach to healing erectile dysfunction, Shari James has been helping men keep it up since 1992. The emphasis of Shari's work is to help men get hard, stay hard, and last long. Shari has been featured on ABC News, Playboy, and The Good Men Project. In addition to being an expert guest on top podcasts, she has been a guest speaker at one of Forbes' top 3 must-attend events, Secret Knock. Shari's mission is to raise the consciousness of men through the doorway of their sexuality. Shari, welcome to the Sex Talk Cafe.
Hello, I'm so excited that we're finally doing this.
Oh my gosh, me too. It's been a long time coming. We should have done this much, much sooner, but here we are. And
Yeah.
just for our listeners, why don't you just share with us a little bit, how on earth did you get into this work? Tell us a little bit about you and who you help and how you got into this field.
Well, I'm officially an erection coach, and I do that holistically. I have a background as a registered nurse in diabetic and post-open heart care. I also have a background in Tantra, and I've studied the 5 elements of Chinese medicine. So I put all that together. And the reason I put all that together is because when I was doing Tantra sessions back in Los Angeles, I was working with men, women, and couples. And for me as a healer, to be the most effective, the other person has to be relaxed. And I made up this meditation on just improving it basically to really help people get in their bodies, like the LA lifestyle, to really help people drop into their bodies when they would come in. I improved a meditation and I would notice that, guys would be kind of shifting their pants a bit in the groin. And it's not like they came in for ED. It was just kind of, general tantra things or sexual healing. Like maybe they've had a history of sexual abuse. So anything with sexuality. And they would after the meditation, I can't believe I got an erection because I was going to talk to you about ED. I really want to get off these pills. And, at the time I'm like, I don't really do anything for erectile dysfunction. So Tantra can't cure that on its own. And it happened enough times accidentally. And I mean, my clothes were on, theirs clothes were on. This was just a pretty normal situation. Maybe I have a sexy voice, but so when they got relaxed, they got erect. And I was like, I think I might be onto something here. And I had a doctor friend and I said, I'd like to experiment with ways to heal erectile dysfunction. Could you give me your cases that are there's just no hope in a lot of ways, because at least I could experiment, or maybe they have a lot of health problems, and I didn't charge them anything, and I'm like, hey, are you willing to experiment with me? I have some ideas. And over that year they all ended up getting cured and getting off pills, and I was like, okay, I'm definitely onto something here. And that it really just took off from there. And then that became my focus, just solely focusing on this issue, as well as, lasting longer in the bedroom, creating different types of orgasms for a man. But yeah, ED has been my through line for quite a long time now.
Yeah, that's amazing. So you kind of just sort of discovered. And I agree that relaxation, I mean, I talk about that a lot as well in the work that I do, couples and women. I mean, it's such a core principle of arousal.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm wondering, kind of curious about, erectile dysfunction and maybe erections. Like, let's just talk about erections and how they show up for men, what kinds of challenges you encounter as you work with men and as an erection coach. What do you see what do you see a lot of? What mostly walks through the door for you?
Hmm. Boy, it's so varied. I mean, anywhere from ages 25 to 85. So I think that people would be surprised to hear 25 or 85, right? Like women are like, what? I still got to be putting out when I'm in my 80s, right? Like, yep, men still are desirous. And then in your 20s, you wouldn't think anybody would be having a problem. I mean, that's your peak years in a lot of ways.
Right.
So depending on someone's age, there's going to be more of a predominant causation with
Mhm.
this.
Talk about the cause. Like, what causes this in the different age ranges that you see there that you mentioned? What causes ED?
Okay. All right. That's a loaded question. So first of all, one of my sayings is your problem is not that you have erectile dysfunction. Your problem is that you don't know why, right? Because I work from the causes inward, and I'm not touching anyone's penis. I'm not seeing their penis. 95% of my business is on Zoom. So causation wise, in the early 20s, it's typically going to be porn related, number one, and then performance anxiety, number two.
How does porn affect erections? Let's talk about this because I get a lot of questions about this.
Yeah.
Porn good? Is it bad? And I'm really curious, and I have my own opinion, but I want to hear yours. And
Sure, I'll
how,
give you the
like, how does it affect a man's ability to get erect and stay erect? And how does it contribute to ED?
I see porn as a program. So if your brain is a computer, then you're programming it with a particular software. And typically what you'll find is the brain gets used to a certain level of porn, and then you'll have to amp it up and look for things that are more spicy, have multiple tabs open. And that's when you know you're starting to go down the bad path, so to speak, right? So is porn itself bad? I guess not. Um, However, it is really designed to be addictive and to get your brain used to certain levels of dopamine. It can lead to other addictions as well. And once your brain gets used to that level of visual stimulation, your partner probably is not going to cut it because she's not doing the things they're doing in porn. She may not look like a porn star. So it's like I feel that it actually burns out your visual cortex in a lot of ways, all that digital pornography. I know the younger men I've worked with, they've stated to me that once they got off porn, they felt like they got their imagination and their innocence back.
Whoa. Wow.
That's you.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps as I said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In instance, but I would imagine, heavy porn use, right? Like you're not using that part of your brain because it's sort of being done for you on the screen. But
Hmm.
talk to me about, so that part makes sense, but tell me about this innocence piece that these men report. What's that about?
Well, if you're already having trouble with ED in your 20s, just imagine at what age you started. And to my knowledge, isn't it so that the brain really develops into your early 20s, like for full brain development? So you're already programming your brain with this. So when stealing their innocence, I want to say that's more of like an essence, right? That's like a little bit hard for me. That's the feedback that I get. The way that I work is I always work on speaking from a place of truth and observation because I don't have a penis and I don't have ED. And as an expert, it's my job to certainly give an opinion, but I make sure that I'm only giving an opinion based on what I'm seeing is happening out there and what's happening for my clients as well once they're healed.
So what about like later in life? So a lot of porn use in the, younger men, I'm sure, same with older
Mhm.
maybe too, but what tends to change throughout the lifespan in terms of the cause of ED?
So I would say the next grouping would be 38 to 42. And that grouping is typically an overstimulated nervous system. So having a very driven lifestyle and stress is actually cumulative. So all of a sudden it's going to start hitting their body and their body's like, like I don't, you're using up all the reserves here. Like I don't, that's when they'll start to notice a decline in the morning erection and maybe some wonky performances that'll freak them out, which then creates creates the vicious cycle of performance anxiety.
Let's talk about that. Performance anxiety. It's such a common one.
I know. And I would say, whenever I work with someone, it's always for 3 months. And I would say performance anxiety is the hardest thing to treat, right? So we can get their morning erection back. We can get them hard again without pills, getting them off of pills, or in some cases, getting pills to work. Performance anxiety, I have to give a series of tools and practices that are done away from sexuality, because sexuality, from my perspective, magnifies everything.
Mhm.
So however you're feeling about yourself inwardly as a man is going to show up sexually. I liken it to being like an overnight success as a celebrity where all of a sudden the cameras are on you and it's like, oh my gosh, I was a plumber yesterday. Now I'm a celebrity. It's like, so like everything is magnified. Performance anxiety requires practice and discipline to overcome.
Okay.
And it's a series of tools and small experiences of building confidence in place of the anxiety. With that said, one thing I've noticed with men is they often have a hard time receiving. So typically with them on actually acknowledging and receiving those small confidence building moments.
Yeah, and how do you help men? Like what are some of the things you have a very diverse background as a holistic nurse, the Tantra background, the Chinese five element. You've got a lot of different threads that you weave into your work, and I'm really curious for our listeners, like what do you do with a client? What are some of these things that you teach and the tools that you use to help men maybe overcome performance anxiety and or be able to get an erection back at age 80, for example?
Well, first thing you have to do is look at what's going on with the nervous system. This year I also got certified in nervous system work and working with someone with nervous system trauma. So if you want to add that to the list. So really analyzing like where is someone's nervous system at? One of my formulas is open heart equals hard penis. So if your nervous system is tight, your heart's tight, your blood flow's tight, your penis isn't going to work well. So there's various things to do for the nervous system, whether it be teaching mindful breathing, just breathing deep and full. But even that's a process. Depending on whether I'm working with someone in a group format or privately, I do a lot of energy work, which I think people are surprised to learn you can easily do it over Zoom, and you can actually easily do it in a group when you get to a certain level. And then, you have to have good circulatory flow. So some of this is also analyzing a person's lifestyle and like, okay, like you're going to want to add this in here. Definitely the high intensity training where you're bringing your heart rate back up and back down and back up and back down is more ideal as a form of cardio. It's teaching your heart and your nervous system to be responsive versus steady. And that also helps to build stamina. And then looking at what I call sexual energy management. And that's, going from the Chinese medicine way of thinking where your kidneys are your gas tank. So what are your adrenal stressors and where is that stealing energy from your body? I have a different perception of a morning erection than the American Medical Association.
Okay, what's yours?
And okay, so 90% of my work is based on building up the morning erection. So it's a critical piece. So you have to have a relaxed nervous system, which means you are getting good sleep overnight, good blood flow. Also, a man's mental and emotional well-being shows up in the morning erection. And the amount of sexual energy that you have in I call it your tank, your sexual energy tank in your body. And if one of those things are out of balance, it's going to impact the morning erection. again, it's from doing this for, I think I'm going on my 18th year now of doing this, and observation and listening to clients. So there's cases where I'm working with someone and suddenly out of nowhere there's a breakup and he feels depression, and it's like, oh, we've built his morning erection up, and then boom, breakup, emotions, depression, morning erections go bye-bye.
Wow.
So again, like I'm really saying this based on reality and observation, not out of scientific manuals or things that I've read.
Yeah. Well, so this sounds like there's a lot involved in terms of what a man would need to do. And I'm curious, like, why would someone want to choose working with you with an erection coach and doing this holistic approach versus just taking Viagra?
Well, some of them soon realize that you might start out on 20 milligrams and then you're going to all of a sudden that's going to become ineffective, which it will and it does. And then you're going to find yourself on 50 milligrams. The same thing's going to happen there. And then you're going to find yourself on 100 milligrams. Then that's going to become ineffective. And then you're going to find yourself on injections. And then that's going to become ineffective. And then you're going to find yourself with penile implants. So the pathway that no one talks about is not a good trajectory. I see guys kind of joking around and sniffing, oh yeah, I got a pocket full of Viagra. And I'm like, mm-hmm. All right, enjoy that. I'll see you when that all wears off. So like to me, I'm kind of like laughing about it, but I'm not laughing about it, if you know what I mean. And there's also, luckily in this day and age, there's so much available with enhancing your life and longevity. There are a segment of men who really understand that health and sexuality do go together. I mean, there's sexual health, and it's something that they want to master in their lives. They're already doing really great things for their bodies. This area is just an area that's fallen through the cracks for them. And they want to know how to optimize their sexual fitness and sexual health.
Yeah. Well, what about like an 80-year-old guy who maybe has typically would have lower testosterone, or at least we would assume that to be the case. Maybe that's not true. I'm kind of curious, how do you help like someone in their 80s, for example, get an erection?
So most guys nowadays are on testosterone. I would say the vast majority that I'm working with, they're already on it. So for some reason, again, I don't know if this is just good marketing by whoever, but testosterone, and from my perspective, does not lead to an erection. I do believe that it provides a feeling of fullness in the morning when they wake up, or can provide, like, it's a feeling. So if, like, for example, if a woman put like some testosterone cream down by her clitoris, there's going to be a palpable feeling of fullness. It's going to lead to a bit of a nicer, nicer orgasm. So there's little tricks we learned over the years. And so I do believe it can give a feeling of fullness. I definitely think it's good for a man's well-being, but does it cure erectile dysfunction? Absolutely not.
Wow. So we'll say more about that, because I don't know that I knew that, and many of our listeners probably don't know that either, because we really tend to think like, oh, when you get older, the testosterone declines and all you need is more even for women. I mean, they're putting even women in their 20s on testosterone these days. But menopausal women, as you know, that's one of the things for menopausal women to help with libido in women. And then we tend to think in men, it's just a testosterone thing. But what you're saying is that testosterone doesn't equal erections. What creates the erection?
Well, my way of thinking about it is relax, excite, relax. So you have to be in your parasympathetic of your nervous system, which is relaxed, and then you get the blood vessels open, and then you get excited and tension's created, and there's a little chemical cocktail that happens, and then you use it ideally. And then relax would be then going into the release state, whether you're having an internal type orgasm or an external orgasm. I mean, because I also teach men how to have intense orgasms, full body, and then also non-ejaculatory. So I think a lot of guys, they have no idea that they have so much orgasmic potential and that they can actually consciously create which
Yeah.
type of orgasm they want to have.
Yeah, and that was kind of going to be my next like topic that I want to go into because I think that the whole conversation around ejaculatory choice, right? Like this
Mhm.
idea that you can choose if and when to ejaculate. And I think that that's really like, I find that there's a lot of hurdles that men tend to have when that idea is presented, right? This idea of what if you chose not to ejaculate, or what if you just delayed it? What if you didn't have that as the goal? And like you said, there's such another world of orgasms and orgasmic experiences that become available when a man chooses ejaculatory choice rather than just sort of that habit of going into climax, right? Building up tension, going for the climax, ejaculating and dropping off the cliff and it's over, roll over, go to sleep. There's such another world that's available. And I'm really curious in your
Mhm.
like how have you addressed that? Because I find when I present that idea of ejaculatory choice, it's typically very foreign to most men. And then, yeah, it's kind of a challenge. Like people have to kind of wrap their head around that. Like, well, why would I want to do that? And even women are resistant to it. Like, oh, like my husband would get really frustrated if he didn't, get to have his ejaculation. Like after 10 minutes or 5 minutes or right away, right? There's a whole lot of psychological stuff built up in that too. But I'm really curious, like, how do you introduce that to the men you work with? What's the response that you get? And most importantly, like, why would a man want to even bother with that? What's in it for him?
Well, typically we're solving a problem. So initially when someone's seeking me out, it's because they're solving a problem. It's not always that they want to master something. So what I've done is I've combined overcoming premature ejaculation with learning to create 3 different types of orgasms. And they're like, oh, I didn't know I could get that. Like, yeah, that's as long as we're doing this, why don't we do this simultaneously with it? And then once they start to have these experiences, it's like, I'll get a text message or an email right away, like, I just had a full body orgasm, or I just had an internal, like, non-ejaculatory orgasm. And they're so like, whoa. And I mean, why not have all this on the menu? I worked with a super fun couple and they really made it into a game. They gamified it in a lot of ways and became very playful about it. And he would like, ask her like, well, can I? And she's like, no, not while you're working with Shari. Like, no, she said you can't. And then once they were on the other side of that and getting some different guidance from me, then she would start to like, well, I'll let you know when you can have. And what this would do is she'd be in on it. It's not something that's just happening to her or he's accidentally having happen. I
Right.
think I think to me, like it's just anything that you can make playful is good.
Yeah.
Anything you can make playful. So it was really fun to watch, that unfold, the love, that playful energy that they brought to it. And then they ended up having a lot more sex too, like a lot more. And so that was helpful. And then he also wasn't getting depleted and she wasn't being used as a stress reliever,
Yeah.
right? So women absorb men's energy, especially sexually. And it's like, oh, thanks for your stress, buddy. Now I'm having a sex hangover.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. So I think to me, I always want to I call it texture. Like, let's add more texture to your sex life.
Yeah, and so the choosing if and when to ejaculate is a way that you add more texture and it gives a man some more options in terms of these 3 different types of orgasm. So maybe I think we all are familiar with the sort of the typical ejaculatory type of orgasm, what I would just call climax. But there's internal and full body are the other two I think that you described. And would you like to speak a little bit about what those are?
So the typical one I call a sneeze. So from my perspective, that's a cue, right? And so then for me, the next one on the menu is the intense. That's when it's more localized. You've spent some time building that energy up, and it's like a rocket launch. And as guys get older, they'll notice that their semen kind of, I don't know what's the word, because I want to give you a visual, but I can't because we're audio. just kind of drips and drabs out.
Oh, yeah.
Whereas when they're younger, it's like, whoa, cover your face. It's gonna get in my eyes, like it shoots right out. Right. So the intense is the first step, is the full body, where they start to experience that sexual energy and that orgasm radiating through their body. And then the third is the non-ejaculatory. And that's when you're having an internal orgasm. You're having that, you can feel it like start in the groin and kind of raise to your heart and the top of your head. And in some cases, expand throughout your body. And then nothing comes out.
Yeah, and I'm really curious about that one and how you help men like not ejaculate or separate ejaculation from orgasm. What's your process for that?
Well, it's the it's my final exam. I mean, they get 2 weeks to practice that one. So each week I'm upping the challenge line. I'm like, okay, now we're going to create this type of orgasm. Let's focus on this week. So that's like the fine. So I always have these little final exams, like even on my ED program, there's the final exam. Like if you can master this, like you're golden, right? And so this is my final exam one.
Cool.
And also, part of this training as well, I'm helping them release emotions that have been pent up in their bodies as well. So opening the sexual circuitry, releasing stress, guilt, shame, embarrassment.
Yeah, and
And
why do you think that's important in your work?
well, your body is an instrument, and you have your energetic system, your sexual energy system, which is kind of really, I think my expertise is working with sexual energy. So those emotions create blockages. So the
And
first step is to start getting rid of those blockages.
yeah, and I imagine, right, blockages could impact erectile function as well as
Mhm.
premature ejaculation. I'm kind of curious what your perspective is on that, and from your perspective, what contributes to premature ejaculation, and how do you work with it when that shows up?
Well, just like porn is a program, I basically created my own program so that we're putting new neural circuitry in the brain and building new habits. And then eventually that habit drops into the body. I find that it takes about 6 weeks. And then we circle back, and make sure like, okay, like has all of this taken hold in your body? And then so that's required 6 weeks of discipline, which is masturbation homework, which is ideally super fun. And then after that becomes the art. So you get the discipline, but then the art is how do you apply this to your sex life? Because now there's another person with you. And the art, I think, is really something ongoing. It's easier if you already have a partner. It's easier if your partner is aware that this is something you're working on. It's definitely easier. When you're single, it is a bit more tricky because there's already so much excitement build up. So that's why sometimes even taking it slow with someone when you're single and waiting until you're feeling more relaxed with them, which certainly doesn't hurt. A lot less bad things can come from actually getting to know someone, right? Sexually. I love it, honestly, because I'm really good at it. Number one, it's just an area that I naturally excel in, and it still challenges me. I still feel fear every time I enroll a new client for any program. And I like that. It's a good feeling to me. Like, ooh, okay, like I have someone new to help. So I think there's still a level of excitement for me with this, even though it's been a really long time. So yeah, it's challenging, it's interesting, it's dynamic. It keeps me on my toes. I always tear up a little bit when I'm done working with someone. Like I'm gonna miss them. Like getting emotional just thinking about it because I just had someone end. And it's like I get to be a part of their journey in their life for a short time, and I get to be a positive impact in their life. The beautiful thing about this is, sexuality is really the root. And when we go in and bring these different systems into balance, other people in their lives notice a change in them. Their employees or coworkers will notice a change. Their wife or girlfriend will notice a change in them.
Yeah.
And so I love, it's like a makeover in a lot of ways. It's like
Yeah.
it's like an inward makeover. And so it's very transformational.
I would imagine
Um,
this has kept marriages together and kept relationships happier, and men have been more satisfied and fulfilled and happier in their lives, which obviously the world's always a better place if people are happier and getting more satisfied sexually.
Definitely. Well, as you know, with the work you do, sexless marriage is a freaking epidemic. It's a really big deal. It's a huge, huge topic, and there's many reasons for this. So yeah, I mean, ED is definitely under that umbrella that contributes to a sexless marriage. So bringing the physical intimacy back online is incredibly important, because if not, like your roommates essentially,
Yeah.
or partners. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, tell our listeners, like, how can they find out more about you? And do you have any upcoming offerings? Like, where do people connect with you?
The easiest thing is to go to my website, which is shari-james.com, SHARI-James, JAMES.com. And I have probably 20 contact me buttons on there. So just
Of course, it's
just go
easy
ahead.
to find.
Yeah, I mean, just go ahead and send me an email, and just kind of based on what you send, I like to send things kind of privately, like, okay, this is the next step. So
How do
depending on
how do people work with you? Like, what is their next step if they contact you? So it's private by email, so it's all
yeah,
confidential, I imagine. And then what is your process of
sure.
work?
So the next step is a free 15-minute consultation. And from there, if someone is having firmness trouble, the next step is to move into a formal 90-minute assessment. That's a 12-point assessment. We look at all the causations of erectile dysfunction from there and get clarity on what's going on with you in a way that's going to be different from the medical establishment. And then typically, if someone wants to learn to last longer or create different types of orgasms, we just go straight into that there's no like middle road. The reason I have to do a middle road with the ED work is because there's cases that are going to be mild, moderate, or complex. And then I have to advise based on how much treatment I think that they would need.
Got it. So you do like a customized program in how you work with your clients. So they do their assessment, which is awesome. A 12-point assessment. I hope our listeners are taking note of that. It sounds very thorough. And then from
Terrific.
there, you kind of lead them into the custom. It's like a custom program you create for them, or how do they
There's
work with
three levels. Yeah, there's three levels to it.
you? Okay.
So mild, moderate, or complex. And then
Gotcha.
each one has a built-in
Awesome.
customization. Yeah.
Very cool. And so your website is the best place to find you, shari-james.com.
Yeah, and I mean, signing up for my mailbox newsletter, MALE box newsletter, is a good idea, because that's where I have the most direct communication, and I do not bombard people at all.
Awesome. And how do they get on your newsletter list?
That's right on the website.
On the website. Okay, awesome. Well, Shari, it's been a ton of fun. Thank you so much for being my guest today on Sex Talk Cafe. Thank you for joining me today for the Sex Talk Cafe. Please be sure to show your support by subscribing to this podcast and sharing it with your friends. To keep in the loop on future events and happenings, and to grab your copy of our free ebook, The Pleasure Keys, 7 Secrets to Feminine Sexual Fulfillment, visit us online at pathwaytopleasure.com.